Inflation? A real estate market correction? I want to get you off this cycle of fear, hope, and frustration. In this week's video, we're going to talk about the Toronto real estate market, what's happening, what could happen, what might happen, and most importantly, what you should do about it. Hi, I'm Paul Haley, Toronto realtor, investor, educator, and speaker, and I want to help you think about the Toronto real estate market and get off this cycle of fear, hope, and frustration. So remember, media is trying to sell newspapers. They aren't necessarily telling you all the relevant, pertinent facts. So, and the current story is that we're going to see inflation, and that's going to cause a correction in the real estate market. But you have to remember, no one knows what's going to happen, okay? Nobody has a prediction. And if you base your predictions on one factor alone, you can get in trouble, right? The CMHC did that last year when they based their predictions on potential mortgage foreclosures. And, they massively predicted this market wrong. They said it was going to go down by 18% and it went up by 20+%. So you got to be careful when you're looking at predictions. It's just conjecture. No one really knows what's going to happen. Number two, notice they're talking about a Canadian real estate correction. Well, that may be true. Listen, if you're living in a small town, you've had no immigration, no job growth, no wage growth, and you've seen prices jump 20%, yeah, you're probably going to see a correction. I don't really know. I don't know those markets. I know the Toronto market. And number three, just remember, predicting a correction isn't rocket science, but timing sure is. I can tell you absolutely the Toronto market, real estate market, is going to go through a correction, and I can also tell you it's going to double. I just can't tell you when those things are going to happen. And as it turns out, that's actually what you need to know. Okay, so let's talk about what's going to happen. But first, let's just talk about what's happening now. So TRREB just released the numbers for March. So that's comparing March of last year to March of this year. And sales are up 97%. But now remember, that March, half of that March is when we got into this, and sales really went down significantly. So, take these numbers with a grain of salt. Yeah, they're up. They are up. The market is very strong, but it's it hasn't almost doubled. New listings are up 57%, and that's great. But they're not keeping up with sales growth, so that's causing price pressures, right? Average price was up 21.6% across the GTA to almost 1.1 million. Congrats, Toronto. You're way above $1 million now. Is that good? It is still a strong seller's market, and as we discussed, primarily because the economy is strong. Unemployment is down to 7.5%, which is good news. Canadians saved record amounts of money. And now they want to spend it on something. Interest rates, let's be honest, interest rates are historically low. They've never been this low, which is, partially fueling this boom. And structurally, we just have a housing shortage in Toronto. We're not keeping up with building new housing units, and we're not making more houses, particularly in the core. So what is going to happen? That's really the question. And listen, like Morpheus told Neo, remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. So my jam, I just want to give you the information to help you make a decision. So there are three things that are going to affect the Toronto real estate market going forward, right? So immigration, supply, and inflation. So let's talk about each of those three things. So the first thing, immigration. So Canada's forecasting immigration to go up to about 400,000 people. Scaling up to 450,000 people, and the GTA typically receives about 50% of those people. So that means we're going to have to find a place for 200,000 people per year to live in the GTA. And I think personally there's going to be a big push by universities to reopen, in-person classes, as Laurentian University recently filed for bankruptcy protection and just laid off 100 professors. I think universities are really going to push to have international students come back this year. So this immigration is really going to keep pushing real estate prices, at least in the short term. right? And especially in the lower price segment condos, I think we're going to see this gap has opened between condos and freehold. I think once immigration comes back, we'll see now condos kind of push back into freehold, and rents are going to come back, right? So investors have been waiting for rents to come up. Once we get all these international students and immigration flowing again, we're going to see rents jump. Supply, number 2, supply. So really it's just the lack of supply. So in Toronto, in the GTA, we're building about 50,000 units, housing units per year. I mean, most of those are condos, right? And immigration, we're just going to be short about 15,000 plus, maybe 20, maybe 25 now, 1,000 units per year. We're going to be short. So we're going to have a supply shortage in the medium to long term. And inflation. Okay, let's talk about inflation. This is the thing that's getting everyone excited right now. They're saying we're going to see inflation, which is going to drive housing prices up. So let's just take a step back. Governments have done 3 things, right, to help bolster the economy in these times. The first is they've increased stimulus spending, right? So they've offered wage continuity, let's call it, right? So that's kind of like a printing of money. They're just paying people basically from the government coffers. Number 2 is they've basically dropped the overnight rate to 0.25%, which it's never been 0.25%, so that's historically low. And the third thing, you may not know this, but governments around the world has done what's called quantitative easing. In the U.S., the government buys treasury bonds, and this is stimulating the economy it's another way of putting money into the economy. And in Canada, we were buying mortgage bonds. I actually don't know if they're still doing that, but they did that. So, the unfortunate thing here is those last 2 things in particular really pushed the real estate market, right? Because it kept, long-term mortgage rates lower and, short-term variable rates lower by lowering the overnight rate and supplying lots of cash in the bond market. Okay, so the focus of all the correction predictions is that, all this stimulus is going to cause inflation, and inflation is going to mean governments are going to increase interest rates, and those increased interest rates are going to make mortgage payments more expensive, and that is going to cool or correct the real estate market. So let's dive into this. And if you need a quick explanation of inflation, check out this video. So first of all this inflation talk so far is hype. The CPI is still at 1.1%. Now their adjusted CPI is at 1.5%, but both of those are still well below the 2% target set out by the Bank of Canada. And if there is inflation, it will actually be caused not by economic growth, but by short-term supply issues. So think, travel when immigration comes back, and, building supplies have gone up. And, of course, by, basically printing money, pouring money into the economy. That's what's going to cause the inflation, not economic growth, which is actually what governments want. If we do have inflation, we actually don't know yet what the degree of this inflation is going to be. So far, like I said, we haven't had any, and predictions are wildly, of course, all over the place. And more importantly, we actually don't know how the governments are going to react to inflation, right? So they may tolerate some short-term inflation spikes, certainly because this isn't an economic growth situation. Governments will be reluctant to say, cut off the stimulus spending, stop doing quantitative easing, and jack up interest rates, because that will halt the economy at a time when we need the economy to grow. So if there is inflation, what will they do? I imagine we'll probably get back to, pre-2020 levels, when, interest rates were around 3%. You could get some under 3, you could get some a little bit over 3. So I imagine at some stage, at least in the medium term, we will get back to that point. But, I don't know. I'm just guessing. And remember, here's kind of the double-edged sword, is inflation actually means the price of real assets, like real estate, goes up. So if we have inflation, you already know the price of real estate is up. But so, that's the problem. If there is inflation, it's because real estate values are higher. So, listen, if I could put it simply, let's put it this way. Government policy, both long and short term, favors real estate as an asset class, right? It's going to push real estate higher and higher. And that's actually not going to change. Yeah, some of the short-term stimulus will change, but government policy focusing on home ownership probably isn't going to change. And if we have inflation, we don't really know what the impact is going to be in Toronto or the GTA. If I look back to 2017, when there actually was a market correction, you probably already forgot, it primarily affected the 905, right? The 905 came down, but the core Toronto kept growing and growing. And actually, core Toronto hasn't been growing as quickly as the suburbs. So, I think the suburbs are gonna do this up and down, while the core just kind of keeps growing and growing. Because remember, we're not making any more houses in the core. We're landlocked. We're building some new condos, but even then, it's like getting smaller and smaller parcels of land. And the truth is, building a condo in the core is expensive. Actually, building a condo anywhere in the GTA is expensive. It's at least $800 plus a square foot just for building and permits and all that, and all the fees you have to pay. Plus, you have to buy the land. Plus, you have to make a profit. So structurally, you're looking at $1,000 plus per square foot just to build a condo. So you will continue to see headlines saying that there will be a Toronto real estate market because, listen, the government does want the real estate market to cool down. They want the market to cool down. And one way to do that is by creating fear and trying to slow down the buy side. So what should you do? That's really the point. That's really the question. And listen, the truth is, if you're experiencing these cycles of fear, hope, and frustration, it's because you don't own real estate and you don't own rental property. People that already own their home and own rental properties, they sort of read the headlines and it's kind of interesting to them, but they don't really get excited because their day-to-day life doesn't really change. Yeah, they're building lots of wealth through these price increases, but it doesn't, they go and they collect their rents and they pay their mortgage. And unless they've recently gone out to refinance, either to take some more money out to do something like invest in more real estate or just to lower their payments, they haven't really noticed these prices going up. It's really people that aren't in the market that it's really affecting. And they probably haven't taken out a whole bunch of money to go and buy a Ferrari. Well, that would be fun. And actually, price of exotic cars, I heard, is like skyrocketing right now. So, that's probably an indication that things are fairly hot. So really, this might sound strange, but there is one cure to get out of this cycle of fear, hope, and frustration, and that is just buy some real estate. Yeah, it might seem like it's tough and there's all this stuff, going on and you're worried about, overpaying. But in the long term, you're going to lock in your payments, buy something you can afford, lock in those payments, and, in 5 years, you'll have to refinance. But by then, whatever's going to happen inflation-wise will happen. Prices will keep growing and you'll be in good shape. That's a really good long-term strategy. So I hope you found that hugely helpful. If you want to talk about inflation or real estate or getting into the market, shoot us an email, info@thinkto.ca, and please leave a comment below, and please like this video so I'll know to make more of this type of content, and please smash that subscribe button so you get updated when we post new content each and every week. Talk soon.